Okay, so for this lesson, we will be talking about ergonomics, machine guarding, and personal protective equipment. We're going to start off with ergonomics, and if you've never heard of this term, think of ergonomics as working smarter, not harder. So ergonomics is pretty much adapting your work area or an employee's work area to their body. What tools, what equipment, what can we do to make their jobs a little bit easier, not just to make it easier, but to help prevent injuries. So ergonomics is the science of fitting workplace conditions and job demands to the capabilities of employees. Ergonomic principles are used to improve the fit between the worker and the workplace. A practical approach to ergonomics considers the match between the person, the equipment they use, the work process, and the work environment. A person's capabilities, physical attributes, and work habits must be recognized to improve ergonomic factors in the workplace. So what are some of these injuries that come from lack of an ergonomic program or ergonomics in the workplace? And you're talking about CTDs, cumulative trauma disorders, MSDs, musculoskeletal disorders, which affect the muscles, tendons, nerves. Statistics with ergonomics is 90% of all office workers use personal computers. And ergonomics has to do also with your posture. And sometimes to correct things like your posture, you need the right tools or the right office chair. In 1997, work-related muscular disorders reached 275,000 cases. Carpal tunnel syndrome comprises 63% of, carpal tunnel syndrome comprises 30% of workplace injuries. Women outnumber 3 to 1 sustaining carpal tunnel syndrome, and that's probably because women have more of an office job than men do. WMSDs, which are musculoskeletal disorders, account for 20 billion in direct costs each year and 100 billion in indirect costs. So when you're talking about strains, sprains to the back, to the hands, to the arms, all these are they're lengthy injuries, they're complicated injuries, and sometimes it could be pretty severe injuries if you're talking about the back that require surgery. So ergonomic injuries are costly. With that said, some of the benefits of an ergonomic program are decreased injuries, illnesses, and workers' compensation costs, increased efficiency at work, increased physical well-being, decreased absenteeism and turnover because your employees are not being injured or hurt, and an increase in employee morale. And these are some of the common types of MSDs, musculoskeletal disorders, are tendonitis, carpal tunnel syndrome, tennis elbow, neck and back injuries, strains, sprains, bursitis. So what are some of the tasks or jobs that employees are doing that cause these MSDs or ergonomic injuries? Depends on the repetition of the job that they're doing, how much force they're using, any awkward postures that they're having, a static posture, any contact stress, temperature extremes, and vibration. And we will talk about these here in a little bit, each one of these. So when identifying risk factors, conditions, or circumstances that increase the chances of developing an MSD, the likelihood of developing an injury is depending on the frequency and duration of exposure to risk factors. So not just, say for example, you have to lift a box, but how often you have to lift the box? Is it 10 times a minute for just 1 minute an entire day, or is it 10 times a minute every 5 minutes? Both occupational and personal risk factors can affect an individual's well-being at home or at work. So repetition occurs when the same or similar movements are performed frequently. Repetition can also occur when different tasks are performed if those tasks have the same movements, and maybe using your fingers a lot. Injury may result from repetition when the tissues do not have adequate time to recover. Force. Force is the amount of physical effort required by a person to do a task or maintain control of tools or equipment. A pinch grip produces 3 to 5 times more force on the tendons in the wrist than a grip with the whole hand. And a pinch grip is pretty much when you use just your fingers to lift something. With excess force, the muscles are contracting much harder than normal. This can lead to stress on the muscles, tendons, and joints. An awkward posture is a deviation from the neutral body position. And the neutral body position is pretty much if you're relaxed, standing up straight, that's your neutral body. A neutral body position is safest and most efficient position in which to work. That's when they say when you lift the box, you keep your back straight. You want to keep the natural S-curve of your back. Awkward posture puts stress on muscles, tendons, and joints. Static posture occurs when one position is held for a prolonged period of time. The muscle will become fatigued from a lack of blood flow during a static posture. This fatigue can lead to discomfort and even injury. So static posture is say you're standing in the same place for 8 hours a day. Contact stress is caused by any sharp or hard object putting localized pressure on a part of the body. Contact stress will irritate local tissues and interfere with circulation and nerve function. So if you're behind the desk and you're resting your arms or your hands on the edge of the desk or table, that the place where the desk comes into contact on your arm or hands, that will be the contact stress on your hand, and that's when it could interfere with circulation. Temperature extremes is when your environments are really hot or really cold. Extreme cold constricts blood vessels and reduces sensitivity and coordination of body parts. Excessive heat can result in increased fatigue and heat stress. Vibration. Exposure to vibration can occur while you're using power tools or while driving equipment. Vibration from power tools can place stress on tissues of the fingers, hand, and arms. Whole body vibration from driving puts stress on all spinal tissues. So vibration for us, or our area of exposure, will probably be any forklift drivers in your facility whenever they're going in and out of the trailers using the ramps. Sometimes when they come in or out, it jumps a little bit. So that would be whole body vibration for the forklift operators. So any of these other tasks puts you at risk for an ergonomic injury. Working with your hands overhead for more than 2 hours a day. Your neck or back bent forward more than 30 degrees for more than 2 hours a day. Squatting or kneeling for more than 2 hours a day. More than 2 hours a day of pinching 2 or more pounds of weight or 4 or more pounds of force. You see here this gentleman is picking up this block here. That is a pinch grip. So for him to make it easier for himself, he should lift it from the body using his entire hand. And then also gripping 10 or more pounds of weight or force. So you see here, 2 hours a day is pretty much where you want to be at with any of these movements. No more than that. Any highly repetitive motion, workers who repeat the same motion every few seconds for more than 2 hours a day with their neck, the shoulders, elbows, wrists, or hands. What about for data entry behind the desk? Intensive keying for more than 4 hours a day. This is why whenever you're doing any type of task, whether it's behind the desk, assembling, you want it every few minutes or maybe once every 30 minutes to an hour, you want to stop what you're doing, take a few seconds and just stretch your hands, your fingers, your neck, your back, just so you're not in the same position constantly. Repeated impact, using the hands or knees as a hammer more than 10 times an hour or more than 2 hours a day. Any heavy, frequent, or awkward lifting, lifting objects more than 75 pounds once a day, 55 pounds more than 10 times a day, 10 pounds more than twice a minute for more than 2 hours a day, or 25 pounds above your shoulders, below knees, or at arm's length for more than 25 times a day. And this is where you really have to be careful, because anytime you're lifting something away from your body, you're adding extra stress on your back. Moderate to high hand vibration for more than 2 hours a day, or at a high level for more than 30 minutes a day. So you want to look at some of the positions, maybe when you're walking the floor, doing a safety walk, look at the different tasks that the employees are doing, and look at the physical demands, the layout of the work area. Are they having to reach constantly across the table, reach behind them? Are they having to twist a lot? Look at the size, shape, and weight of objects handled. And these results will help to determine the controls. So if you see them struggling with some of their tasks, we could come up with ideas of maybe placing the items closer to their bodies, giving them an extra table, giving them a platform to stand on. Just it would help you maybe fix the problems with some of these injuries. For office ergonomics, by applying ergonomic principles to the office setting, risk factors are minimized, productivity is increased, and overall workplace quality is improved. The workstation must be adjusted to promote a neutral position while a person works. So the workstation, the height of your chair, the angle of your wrist and arms, and even the angle of your monitor, so that way you're not putting stress on your eyes. When adjusting a workstation, keep in mind that all of the equipment interacts. Making one adjustment may alter the other. Also, the position of some of your office supplies. If you're having to use a stapler constantly, you don't want the stapler farther away from you. You want it as close to you as possible, so it prevents you from having to reach over and stretch all the time. You could adjust your workstation by adjusting the chair, adjust the reach requirements like we just mentioned with the stapler, and then adjust the focal requirements. You want your monitor angled just a little bit below your eye level sight, so that if it's too high, it's going to put strain on your eyes, because they constantly have to be looking up. Correct environment. Check the lighting, noise, and temperature. Check the work pace and stress levels. And check for work processes. Improve your posture and habits by modifying your wrist and hand motions. Improve their neck and back postures. Sit up straight. And consider personal preferences as well. Alright, so here's the big one. Industrial ergonomics. This is out in the warehouse, out on the floor. How can we help some of these employees? Well, by applying ergonomic principles in industrial settings, a safer, healthier, and more productive work environment can be developed. Employees and employers need to know how to minimize risk factors by choosing the best tools and work techniques for a given task. You can arrange their work area by considering the base of support, place equipment and materials where appropriate. So you want them as close to the employee as possible, so they don't have to be walking far or stretching. And you also want it at waist level, so they don't have to be bending down or reaching up if it's above it. Choose the appropriate tools, check the fit, make sure the tools match the task. And also correct the environment, also with the lighting, noise, and temperature. Check their work pace, are they demanding too much from them? And check the work process as well. and they can also improve their postures and they check work techniques. So once we do an assessment of their jobs and we see that maybe they're in the danger zone, maybe they're having to do a lot of repetitive work, they're in bad positions, bad posture, the next step is to develop and implement control strategies to increase the quality and productivity. Once the risk factors and their causes are identified, control strategies can be implemented based on needs. So whenever you want to eliminate a hazard, you always want to start off with an engineering controls. And engineering controls is the best method to take because you completely eliminate the hazard. Instead of having to give the employee PPE, instead of having them rotated every once in a while, you completely eliminate it by using engineering controls. These are appropriate initial design of the workstation or work area, improving the design of the existing work area or equipment, providing necessary equipment and accessories, and adjusting the workstation layout and equipment. So for example, if an employee is working in a workstation and the workstation is too high, the engineering control would be to buy a brand new workstation at the employee's appropriate for the employee's height, which prevents him from having to reach up on that workstation. And administrative controls would be training workers in the work methods, varying or rotating task, limiting extended work hours, and providing mini breaks. So if employees are having to assemble parts for 8 hours a day, administrative control would be to rotate them out to a different position every 2 hours. But again, the exposure is still there. And then personal protective equipment acts as a barrier between a person and a hazard, and this should be the last level of defense. The last resort is to use PPE. You want to implement the first two first, and if that doesn't completely eliminate the hazard, then you go to the PPE. PPE is only appropriate in situations when engineering or administrative controls cannot be implemented. Back belts and other braces are not considered PPE. These devices should not be used in place of incorrect work techniques. Instead of giving them back belts, we train on the proper methods or the safe methods of their job. What you can do to prevent injury: develop an ergonomics program, take proper breaks, health and fitness, and be aware of your hobbies away from work. When ergonomics are improved in the workplace, we work smarter, not harder. Quality, comfort, and safety make us more productive and happy people. Stay healthy and safe, and then take action. Now, let's look at a few pictures, and let's see what these employees here are doing correctly, what they use to make their jobs easier, and working smarter, not harder. So the gentleman here on the upper left, it looks like he added a few pallets to bring his workstation, or actually the boxes, up to waist level. That is very good on his part, although he may not be using the appropriate equipment because you don't want to use the pallets. This gentleman over here looks like he has an adjustable workstation where he's able to go up or down to make his job a little bit easier. So that one's good. Same thing with this sort of a pallet jack. You're able to raise it up or down depending on your height. The ladies over here are tilting the product, the bottles in this case, towards them. That way it makes it easier to put the labels instead of having to reach into the box. These guys here, it's a lot easier to slide a load than to carry it. So they brought a table, or I'm sorry, a cart over, and then just are sliding these bags over onto the cart. And the gentleman here on the bottom, it looks like he's just going to slide it here on the bottom shelf of the cart. Over here as well, adjustable carts that go up and down depending on your height or the height of the product. These rotate, eliminating the employees from having to reach across the table. So here, he just has to rotate this table and place the products inside. This gentleman is eliminating having to reach across the pallet or walking around. He just simply turns the entire pallet and then places the boxes there. Here, it looks like they've cut out a piece of this workstation or platform here to get the employee closer to the product instead of having to reach across this. This employee was given a hook or a tool to bring the product closer to them. This gentleman off to the right is probably not doing it correctly. He should be standing on the pallet. Should be standing on a step stool or a step ladder like this lady is doing here to prevent the back injury. I really enjoy this one. Here, it looks like they accommodated two different individuals because of their height. They raised this conveyor here to the height of this gentleman on the right, and off to the left, the shorter gentleman it looks like they built a platform for him to stand on, and now they both could work at waist level. A simple fix that you can do is to provide these portable platforms like they're doing here for the two ladies. One of them is taller than the other, so they just gave her one platform. The other lady over here on the right gets two. But again, it's preventing them from having to either be bent over constantly or having to reach up constantly. Tilting, we already talked about that one. The bottle's here, the box here, so that way the worker here doesn't have to be reaching into the box. It just simply places it in there. For pouring, it's a lot easier to place this bucket on this table here and then just pour it into the bigger one. Same thing on here. It looks like they got this little device here that he just simply has to tilt it on there. This one has a screen on the, looks like a giant container, or a container has a screen to rest the bag in instead of having to use your muscle to hold the bag up. Same thing with this gentleman. It created a little table platform here to rest the bag, and then the contents just simply pour into the container instead of having to hold it up. You can also reduce the weight. If you have to pick up all these boxes at the same time, by lifting this red container, you can just simply remove one or two boxes from inside. Same thing here, just take one sack at a time instead of taking two or three. If the box or containers are equipped with hand grips, you want to use those, so they're for a reason. If the item is too heavy, definitely want to do a team lift. And then you also have other tools that would help you, other equipment like non-powered equipment, pallet jacks or carts, and then powered equipment, forklifts, conveyors, and cranes. Here they're using the carts. Instead of having to carry this big bag across the warehouse, they just simply put on the cart and push the cart. These guys down here are using a manual pallet jack to take these. Well, this guy is at least on the right. I don't know what this guy's doing. Maybe he will be placing it there. But he's using the manual pallet jack to push the box to the other location. Here are carts that you can use. This is specific dolly for barrels. Scissor lifts. These are great because as you add weight, just like the one on the right here, the weight of these buckets, the cart is going to come down based on the weight, like it did here. As you remove it, each bucket is going to be it's the level of the buckets are going to get higher and higher to eventually its waist level, so that you constantly pretty much working at waist level. Pallet jacks, forklifts make it a lot easier as well. We have conveyors that bring the boxes to us, or make it a lot easier to push on the conveyor, but they're manual conveyors. Hoists and cranes are also a great tool to use. All right, so that was ergonomics. Remember, it's about working smarter, not harder, and giving the employees the right tools and equipment. So if you see that they're constantly in awkward positions, ask yourself, what can we do to make their jobs a little bit easier? Can we move their workstation? Can we move the materials closer to them? Do they need a step stool? How can we make it easier for them? So that's ergonomics. Now we're going to go into machine guarding. Okay, so machine guarding's pretty much physical hazards of the equipment. Moving parts, electrical parts of the equipment, that if we come in contact, or an employee comes in contact with these parts, they can be severely injured. So how do we protect the employees from that exposure? We have to guard on these moving parts. So safeguarding is needed at all times the machine is in operation. If guards or devices need to be removed for servicing, maintenance, unjamming, setup, tool changes, cleaning, or lubricating, prescribed lockout procedures must be used. So if you have, for some reason, you have to remove the guards, you have to lock out the machine. Once these activities are completed, guards or devices must be reinstalled for full worker protection prior to resuming production. Guards and devices protect employees from injury by preventing the employee from placing his or her hand or body part into a hazardous area or a danger zone. Guards and devices create a physical barrier that does not allow entry of the body into the danger zone, or it stops the action of the machine when a portion of the body is presented in the danger zone, which an example of this would be the sensor. So as soon as you cross the sensor with any part of your body, it completely stops the machine. Or a machine guard physically removes the body part from the danger zone when the machine is in operation. Machine guarding is not instructing the employee not to place her hands in the area. So just because there's a giant blade exposed and you tell the employee, do not place your hands in the machine, that is not machine guarding. You physically have to protect them from the danger. Providing warning tape, simple wires or chains or other warning devices that serve as reminders of where not to reach is also not a form of machine guarding. Safeguarding is not providing tools alone to place or retrieve parts or materials into the danger zone. Using unsubstantial or inadequate material like canvas or plastic curtains to create a barrier to the danger zone. If the employee can still touch it, fall into it, it's not properly guarded. And then having guards present and not in use. You have to use them. So who must be protected? Operators and other employees in the machine area. Perimeter guarding affords the simplest and most complete protection for the point of operation. So it's anybody who could be injured by that machine. That includes machine operators. It could be other employees walking by. It could be guests walking by. Anybody who could potentially be injured by that machine should be protected. If devices such as two-hand controls or two-hand trips are used, some protection must still be provided to prevent others from entering the danger zone. So there's machines that will not start unless the operator has his or her hands on two of the controls or both controls to start it. But it doesn't mean that somebody passing by is protected by from the blade, so that there's that exposure to that employee. You also have to remember the sides and the rear of the machine must be considered in addition to the point of operation. Part, transmission, and machinery for moving materials must be considered. So where is safeguarding needed? At the point of operation, at any in-running nib points, any rotating parts, flying chips and sparks, or exposure to temperature extremes like machines that get really hot. Let's see here if you can spot anything on this picture where it's missing a machine guard. Okay, let's see if you found it. The belt drive is not covered here. If you see it where the arrows are pointing, this is going to be rotating, and an employee or worker's hand or foot or clothing could get caught in this wheel here. What about this one? If you see the saw here, the band saw should have a guard in place, and the guard is usually adjustable to go up and down depending on the product that you are cutting. Hazard recognition. So if you see this in the workplace, is this an adequate machine guard? This railing here. This is more of an awareness railing that does not adequately protect employees from reaching into the conveyor area. So although it somewhat protects them, but an employee could still reach their hand in and then place it in these moving parts. So that would not count as a machine guard. This foot pedal here is used to start the operation of the machine. But as you can see, the guard for the foot pedal is out here. So anybody could come by and step on it. Something could fall, the product could fall on this pedal and start the machine. So this guard should be on top of it to prevent that. What about here, this caution tape? The yellow and black awareness tape has been used as a substitute for guarding, and it's not acceptable in this case because it still leaves the moving part exposed to employees. And these are some of the rotating parts that we're talking about. Any pulleys with spokes, rotating shafts, and couplings with projected bolts or heads, and anything that an employee's clothing could get caught, maybe their hair. So all this has to be protected. Some more examples: rotating cylinders, chains and sprockets, the bow pulleys, and rack and pinions here. Okay, so that was machine guarding. If you see any machines in your location that could potentially cause an injury, if an employee was to, even if it's intentionally puts his hand inside of the machine, if you see any type of exposure, work with their OSM or DOA so we could remedy the situation and put the appropriate guards in place, or work with the client so they could put the appropriate guards. Okay. Now, personal protective equipment. I mentioned earlier that when we're talking about ergonomics, that engineering controls is the best method to remove a workplace hazard, and that's true for pretty much for any topic that we talk about when it comes to safety, whether we're talking about hazardous materials, whether we're talking about ergonomics, bloodborne pathogens, any of that. We want to eliminate the hazard first. So here it talks about the most effective method is to eliminate the hazard. So for example, for hazardous chemicals, if the employee has to constantly be touching some type of oil that could cause blisters after a few months of using this oil, can you eliminate that oil and substitute it with something? It's also oil, but it's not hazardous oil. It's not dangerous where you're causing blisters. So that would be substitution. Then also elimination. Can we eliminate the oil? Maybe use a different product. Engineering controls would be, can we have maybe a robot do it? Bring in a robot to remove the employee from that exposure. What about warnings? Can we add a warning sign next to the machine? Do not forget, or PPE required. Do not forget to wear gloves and your glasses or goggles. Administrative controls. Can we rotate that employee out every 2 hours? So send them to do something else for 2 hours, bring them back for 2 hours, and send them away to do something else for 2 hours. That's administrative controls. And the last level, again, is personal protective equipment. If we can't eliminate that hazard, then we provide the PPE as the last resort. But for on-time employees, we shouldn't have employees that are having to use any extreme PPE. The only items that we're talking about is usually steel-toe boots, gloves, and maybe glasses or some hearing protection. Nothing major like full body suits or respirators. So PPE is used when other controls do not make the work area completely safe. It's used as a supplement to engineering or administrative controls, used while engineering and or administrative controls are being designed and implemented, and these do not eliminate the hazard. If the PPE fails, exposure will occur. So this is why it should be the last resort, because if the employee forgets to use it, doesn't want to use the PPE, they're still being exposed to the hazard. And what are some examples of some of the PPE that you use in your workplace? It could be safety vests as well. Hand protection. Hand protection shall be required for employees whose work involves unusual and excessive exposure of hands to cuts, burns, harmful physical or chemical agents, or radioactive materials which are encountered and capable of causing injury or impairment. We probably don't have to worry about the last two with chemical agents or radioactive materials, but maybe we are exposed to some hands, are exposing our employees' hands to cuts or burns. In hand protection, such as gloves, should not be worn where there is a danger of the hand protection becoming entangled in moving machinery or materials. So depending on the type of exposure that you have, or the type of hazard, whether it's hot materials where it's maybe a box cutter, it could be metal chips, you want to use the right type of gloves as well. The only exception is if those gloves could get caught in the moving part of a machine that they're working with as well, because we don't want their hand to be sucked into the machine. And here's some examples of gloves. The ones you're probably used to and have more in the workplace are the ones here on the bottom left, which is the material handling gloves. Somebody should be using these on the bottom right. Top right, probably for the janitorial folk whenever they're using the cleaning chemicals products. And then here on the top left, if whoever is handling blood or assisting the employee with a Band-Aid, they could wear these type of gloves, doctor gloves. Eye and face protection. Employees working in a location where there is a risk of receiving eye injuries such as punctures, abrasions, contusions, or burns as a result of contact with flying particles, hazardous substances, projections, or injurious light rays which are inherent in the work or environment shall be guarded by means of face or eye protection. Suitable screens or shields isolating the hazard exposure may be considered adequate safeguarding for nearby employees as well. Sometimes not just the operator that needs to be protected, but any nearby employee that could be walking by and get something in their eye. Again, here's some different types of forms of eye protection. And again, it also depends on the type, on the hazard. If you're handling liquids, you probably want this full goggles here. covers everything on the side, because this one, liquids will still be able to get in through the sides, or maybe even this full face shield here. That is it for PPE and for these topics. Remember, ergonomics is working smarter, not harder. Machine guarding, if you see any type of moving parts are exposed, it could even be live wires or electrical wires, they should be protected. And in PPE, we want to assess the hazards that employees are exposed to, and then provide them with the correct type of PPE depending on what they're doing. If you have any questions or if you need further assistance, please feel free to reach out to me or anybody from Safety and Risk. As always, thanks again for your attention. We'll talk to you next time.